Hi everyone, it's me, Arielle, and it's Wednesday Warriors. And this week I'm going to be talking about knowing and respecting limits. And when I'm talking about limits, I mean our own limits. I think a lot of the time we really don't understand that limits can be good things. We think about limiting ourselves as a negative sort of a practice because we may have limited ourselves in respect to other things that felt sort of forced or part of an addictive behavior or something that was related to self harm. But limits can be very healthy. And limits sometimes mean that we are putting ourselves first, and we really do need to learn to put ourselves first. I talked last week about free and structured healing, and as part of that, I was talking about making ourselves a priority. So I did go into that quite a bit actually in the last video. So I'm not going to go into it, all over again and give you a lot of the same thing, but I really do want to stress that it can take a lot of practice to put yourself first. Sometimes focusing on other people is legitimate, honest, and really comes from a place of nurturing and friendship. But other times, focusing on other people is really a distraction from the focus on ourselves because we don't want to focus on ourselves. We tend to focus on other people. Now, that could be, when people focus on other people in a negative way, make comments, complain, be very judgmental, but it can also be, from a helpful standpoint, just making your life be all about other people. And even though you might be doing a lot of good for those other people, there's not a real place for you in your own life. And that's terribly unfortunate if you make that the case. The good news is that, today, as they say, can be the start of the rest of your life. You can change things right now if that's what you want to do. You can decide to make yourself a priority, and you should. I think a lot of the eating disorder mentality tends to be that we're not sick enough or we're not worthy enough, and everyone else is worthy or everyone else is sicker and more deserving of help than we are. And having that mentality continue can be so detrimental to recovery, so detrimental to your life. If that's the sort of lens that you're seeing things through, you're really doing yourself a disservice. So, practicing with yourself that you are enough and you are a good person who has good qualities, even if you see bad qualities, let's just say they're there. It doesn't mean that the good isn't also there. So, you really want to set boundaries, be able to tell people no when you really can't add another commitment or obligation to your plate, and to really put yourself at the top of the list. And even if you can get to the point where you put yourself to the top of the list, to really be okay with that. Because I think sometimes we say, okay, this is what I should be doing. I should be making myself a priority. But then as soon as we do, we still struggle with the guilt that goes along with it. And we feel like it's not quite right. Maybe it feels forced. We're not deserving of that time. Or we just feel strange giving ourselves that me time. Or that turning that positive energy onto ourselves. So that's really the piece that we need to work on. This isn't to say that you can't have your life be filled with other people and do lots of wonderful things for the world, because I certainly am not one to talk. I like to think that I do a lot for other people on a very regular basis, and that does fulfill me and it gives me purpose. But I have to also be very careful to give myself time for me, and time for me and my husband, for example, time for me and my family, time for just me alone in a room, whether it's reading a book or writing in a journal or painting or drawing. Um, it's important, and it's about living the big picture and really being able to enjoy the helping others because you also get the time to yourself. Nothing that we do that's kind to ourselves can really be selfish. We're supposed to be kind to ourselves. And, I can tell you that as much as the people out there may appreciate all the wonderful things you do for them, if you're not kind to yourself, they're going to take every single thing you do for them with a grain of salt, because they can't fully 100% trust in it and believe in it if you don't turn the same kind of mentality onto you. So if you're not being kind to yourself, but you're being kind to others, they appreciate it, but it makes them question things. And I think that's natural, and I think it's good for people to question that because we really need to learn to practice what we preach, and it can be a hard lesson to learn. And again, like with anything, it can take a lot of practice, but it's really a job worth undertaking because once you can practice what you preach, the sense of satisfaction that you get from helping others and from just living your everyday, day to day, it feels so good. I did a video a few years ago, I think, about knowing your limits at home. We had done a rotation on the Freedom Fighters channel about knowing your limits in different places and at different points, and I had focused on knowing your limits at home with things like the computer, the phone, magazines, messages and items and things in our life that really could be a hindrance if we allowed them to be. So I think it's important to always be very conscious and recognize the things that are helping you and then the things that really aren't helping you, or to maybe just see if you're doing too much of one thing, or if you're leaning on it as a crutch, or if you are, the same thing as what I was talking about earlier, using it as a distraction from yourself and from other issues or things that you really should, maybe give a second look to. And it's really good to know what your boundaries are and then set those boundaries because that's the mark of a healthy person. And as much as we would like to believe that we should be able to do whatever we want to do because we're adults, that's only true to a certain extent because someone who is healthy, who is an adult, is going to know where their limits are and what to do with those limits. And it's not that the world is making those limits. These are self-imposed limits. And I don't really like the word limits. I keep saying it, and the more I keep sitting here saying it, the more I dislike it. Because it does sort of have that feel of deprivation about it, and I don't want you to deprive yourself of anything. So I think instead of the word limits, I really want to use the word boundaries. Boundaries are good. Boundaries are healthy. Boundaries are natural. And we can create boundaries for ourselves, and we can widen those boundaries. We can narrow those boundaries. We can take them away sometimes and see how we do. We can put them back. We're in control. And as long as we're in control, we really can't go wrong if we're looking through a healthy lens and not a lens of deprivation. So really focus on that. Think about that. Let it marinate. See where it can take you. And just remember that you can be creative with the things that you do in your life as far as boundaries are concerned, as far as putting yourself first, as far as helping other people. You don't have to do everything by the book as though there are a set of 10 rules that everyone has to follow in this life. You're your own person. We all live where we live. We all live our own lives. No one else can live your life for you. I say that a lot. I say no one can live your life for you because sometimes other people really act like they're the ones living your life. Like something you do is somehow harming them or somehow putting a judgment upon them. But really all they're doing is judging, and they don't have to marry so-and-so. They don't have to live where you're living. They don't have to take the job that you're taking. But they're going to pass judgment. But really what you're doing doesn't affect them. It only affects you. So as long as you're happy, that's what matters. As long as you're healthy, that's what matters. Just remember that there's no limit to the chances that you have. There's no limit to the choices that you can make and the changes that you can make. And you're worth all the time to figure all of that out. And you deserve as much time as you need. So I hope you're having a wonderful week. I hope you enjoyed the rotation that we've done these last 4 weeks. And I will see you all next time.